June is a month of transitions, very multifaceted, multi-layered, and at times quite disorienting and confusing. We start the month loaded with emotions from a full moon in Sagittarius, dropped into this strange liminal space of a void of course moon. And we finish it with another full moon, this time in Capricorn, while Jupiter moves into its most expansive placement yet. In between, we have retrogrades and we have building energy towards July, which is going to be one of the most interesting constellations of the year. So understanding exactly what is happening is going to be a huge advantage in navigating all these waters with ease and grace and a lot of flow. So let's take a look and dive in together. Okay, so before we get into all of the nitty-gritty dates, there is one overarching key theme that is going to be affecting everything in June and that we need to address. Within the last year or so, all of the outer planets have shifted signs. And the thing that is building up now, that it's building up to, is this cradle formation that they are all forming. Pluto in Aquarius is trining Uranus in Gemini, while at the same time sextiling Neptune in Aries. Uranus in Gemini in turn sextiles Jupiter, which is moving into Leo. This is creating a harmonious energy exchange and a flow of energy, which will be exact in July. But because these are slow-moving planets, we will already start feeling this influence in June. We will already start this crescendo, this build-up towards something big that is happening. And you may have heard a lot of astrologers talking about July, because here's the thing, trines and sextiles are considered easy aspects. They are harmonious aspects. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're uneventful. Where energy can flow uninhibited from one planet into the other, it's like opening the floodgates to possibility. A lot of things can happen, especially with the sextiles. These are harmonious aspects, but they have quite a bit of like an oomph behind them. They're not relaxing in any way. Things do happen. Significant events do have a tendency to happen when sextiles are involved. It's just that they tend to be ones that we can grow from a lot more easily, rather than with squares and oppositions where sometimes it feels like you're just kind of banging your head against a wall. So all of this is worth remembering and keeping in mind, because this June is building up towards this being exact and towards this very peculiar astrology that is going to unfold in the month of July. And astrologically speaking, June starts in a bit of a strange way, because on the 31st of May, the last day of May, we have a full moon in Sagittarius. This full moon trines Saturn in Aries, and then it goes into quite a long period of being void of course. When the moon is void of course, it is essentially not interacting with any of the other planets or stellar planetary objects until it goes into the next sign. This lends a feeling of being in a kind of liminal space, of being untethered, of being ungrounded. You often say that things that are started during a void of course moon, they tend to either not finish at all or finish in very unexpected ways, and you don't really want to be starting anything new because there's just no solid grip and no footing for any of our endeavors. So after the big, expansive emotions of the full moon, we are kind of dumped into this void of course, where nothing really makes sense, where we've just experienced something that may have really tested our core beliefs, and now we're left in this strange place where we might not be able to easily make sense of it. To add to it, on the 1st of June, while this is all happening, Mercury changes signs from Gemini into Cancer. So this is pretty much rewriting our mental operating system. From Gemini to Cancer, it's quite a significant shift as well. Mercury rules Gemini, it feels very at home there, it expresses itself in a very clear-cut way. When Mercury shifts into Cancer, the sliders for our curiosity, for our desire to communicate with other people, to learn from others and also to teach them all of the things that we have learned. The desire to gather information that gets turned all the way down, but instead our emotional intelligence gets turned all the way up. Communication starts to flow from feelings and from the gut rather than from the head. And there's less of a desire to have shallow conversations, small talk. We have a desire to go deeper in our conversations. But the danger with that is that with deeper conversations, feelings can also get more easily hurt, and we may be getting more defensive than usual. On the 5th of June, Juno, the asteroid of committed relationships, stations retrograde in Aquarius. Juno retrogrades don't tend to be particularly dramatic, but they do offer a period of reflection. When Juno is in Aquarius, this reflection centers around themes of how much freedom are you allowed to express in your close relationships? How much freedom are you allowing other people to express? Are you happy with that amount of freedom? Are you happy with that amount of individuality? Is there an opportunity for you to be fully, truly yourself with all the weird bits, all the dark bits, and of course all the lovely bits as well? And if not, what are you going to do about it? So this is a time to reflect on those questions and to have some very honest conversations with the people that you are in close relationship with. The next important date that we need to talk about is the 13th of June, and there are two things happening on the same day. First of all, Venus moves into the sign of Leo. The relationship atmosphere heats up significantly. There is more space for passion in relationships. There is also a bit of a tendency for drama. There is a need for grand gestures that is higher than usual, both to be giving grand gestures and to be receiving them. This is a sign where we want to be seen and considered as magnificent, but not just for the sake of existing, but we're also willing to do something for it and to work for that. This is also expressed in creative endeavors and in our sense of aesthetics. This is where our sense of fashion becomes more exuberant and more maybe eccentric in some ways. We get a taste for opulence and for, like I already said, magnificence, really. It's a great time for any kind of creative project where you really want to blow people's minds. At the same time, we do also need to be careful that there can be an over-reliance on validation from external sources. Being validated by others for our efforts feels really, really good when Venus is in Leo. It's very motivating, but we just need to be careful that that's not the only motivating factor, that we're not just doing things for other people or performing a version of ourselves for other people because we're so hooked on that dopamine rush of someone else saying, yeah, you're really cool, I like you. On the same day, Mercury enters its pre-retrograde shadow. So Mercury is going to go retrograde right at the end of the month. But on the 13th, Mercury enters its shadow phase before the retrograde. So pay close attention to anything around communication, especially where family and home are involved, and any Mercury aspects that are happening in your own personal natal chart, because these are going to repeat a total of 3 times. Once now, once again during the retrograde, and then again after the retrograde. And this is essentially the sky telling us, pay attention. There's something important here. There's something that you need to consider from multiple different perspectives. And we're going to be given that perspective shift while Mercury is retrograde. If you don't know your personal Mercury transits and aspects and what that means and in which area of your life that's going to affect you, that's something that we can look at during a personal consultation. I do still have some slots available for June, so I'll leave the booking link for you in the description bar below. On the 15th of June, we have the new moon in Gemini. This is usually a great time to seed intentions around communication, about the things you want to learn, and about the way you want to think about yourself and the things that you encounter in your life. Now, what makes this a little bit more difficult is that Mercury has just entered this pre-retrograde shadow that we just spoke about. So we may need to be very flexible with our intentions because things are prone to changing. Maybe circumstances themselves will change, but what will definitely change is the way that you think about them. So being too rigid with your expectations and your intentions around this new moon is not really advisable. You may wish to just, open the door to something and see what comes through, because there is no straight line in which things are going to be moving. It's a good time to satisfy your curiosities, maybe sign up for a new course, maybe get some new books, watch some documentaries, whatever it is that follows, where you follow your curiosity, without any expectation of where you're going to land at the end of that. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about the new moons and the full moons and get some manifestation rituals, journaling prompts, and a lot of other fun stuff to go with those lunations, it's a perfect time to sign up for my completely free newsletter, Manifestology. I will also leave the link to that below in the description bar, where you can get a lot of interesting stuff all around the full moons and the new moons delivered straight to your inbox. On the 19th of June, Chiron enters Taurus. Chiron, the wounded healer asteroid, has been in Aries since 2018, triggering wounds around anything to do with the ego and of feeling like you are not enough. When Chiron moves into Taurus, those hurts that are coming up, for the sake of healing, by the way, but it's still painful, it still hurts, are wounds around not having enough, around scarcity or fear of greed for some people, or anything to do with material abundance, possessions, even property. It can even be something like property disputes with your neighbors, where the fence should be going and whether the plant clippings should be on that lot or another lot. It can even go as far as ancestral trauma. A lot of people these days carry a lot of ancestral trauma around being displaced, around property being taken away, and those kind of topics. So those are the things that will be coming up. Having said that, Chiron will be retrograding back into Aries in September. The 21st of June is our summer solstice, in the Northern Hemisphere at least, the longest day of the year, or if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, the shortest day of the year. It also marks the ingress of Cancer season. So where during Gemini season we were compelled to and benefited from expanding our networks, from connecting with as many people as possible on a loose kind of way, during Cancer season we pull that energy back in. It is still a time where connection to other people is very important, but we whittle it down to the people who are most important to us, to our family, to our immediate circle, to those that we would consider to be our tribe. Because in Cancer season there is a lot of vulnerability, emotional vulnerability that is naturally coming out, and you don't necessarily want to be emotionally vulnerable with someone who you just met at a bar 2 days ago because they lent you a lighter. If you're going to be emotionally vulnerable, it needs to be around people you trust and that you feel safe with. On the 28th of June, Mars enters Gemini. Physical energy and vitality gets a boost. It's quite slow when Mars is in Taurus, but it's also quite grounded. As Mars moves into Gemini, we can get very excited about a lot of shiny little objects. There is an urge to begin a lot of things and not necessarily to see them through to the end. Mars in Gemini arrives a little bit like someone who's just downed 3 espressos in a row and wants to tell you about the really, really good idea that they've had. So seeing as Mercury that rules Gemini and is going to be governing Mars, so to speak, is going to be going retrograde, we do need to be very careful about nervous system overload and burnout, because this is a lot of very, very frizzy energy to deal with. On the flip side, it's a very beneficial time to be doing research, to be doing brainstorming, to be gathering ideas rather than taking concrete action steps, because they can just get so easily scattered. Whereas with ideas, you can travel fast, you can explore different ideas without necessarily wearing yourself out. If you have any siblings, they might be needing more energy from you during this time. Same with neighbors and your local community, as those are all signified by Gemini. And Mercury goes retrograde the very next day on the 29th of June. So standard advice applies. Back up all your files, make sure you proofread any communication that you send, and just try your best to communicate and express yourself as clearly as you possibly can. I have always balked at the advice of trying not to start any new projects or planning any travel while Mercury is in retrograde, because I'm an Aquarius sun and I do whatever I please. I'm backtracking now a little bit because of a Mercury retrograde experience that I've had recently, where I've had to plan travel during a Mercury retrograde, and it was an absolute nightmare. So if you can help having to start any new projects around this time, try and put them off a little bit. If you can't help it, you can't help it. It is what it is. You got to work with the energy as best you can. But if you have a choice, maybe wait until Mercury is going direct again. Things will be a lot less complicated and easier to plan and to coordinate. And then we close off June with a full moon in Capricorn. A full moon in Capricorn is a time to review what we have built over time, what our legacy, intended or unintended, is right now, what kind of life we have created through the daily micro actions that we take, through our habits, through our routines, and if we like that or not, and where it might be time to review that. On the very same day, Jupiter enters Leo, making for a very gregarious and expansive placement. If you natally have Jupiter and Leo, this marks the start of your Jupiter return, usually a very fortunate and lucky year of your life, so enjoy. It's also a fantastic placement for anyone who requires some form of visibility for their work or for their passion projects, which these days is pretty much everyone, to be honest. It gives us more confidence, it gives us more flair, and it ensures that good things happen to us when we are willing to put ourselves out there in front of other people. So June is a very transitional month in 2026. Not in a dramatic way where everything falls apart and nothing's ever the same again. More of a quiet way. More like the beginning lines of a chapter that won't really take shape and won't really start making sense until several months, or maybe in some cases even several years after that. The trick is to stay curious, stay open, let go of rigidity, and just observe what is unfolding for you individually and what's unfolding for all of us collectively. If you enjoyed the insights that are provided in this video, then please make sure you like this video and that you subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in July.